Joe Rogan just dropped a name, and the internet hasn't recovered since. Jim Carrey showed up at the 2026 Caesar Awards in Paris. Same name, same face. But wrong eyes, wrong skin, wrong energy, and fans immediately knew something was off. The man who once called Hollywood completely meaningless was now standing on its biggest stage, smiling, celebrating, loving every second of it. That's not a personality shift. That's a replacement. Kanye warned us. Jamie Foxx disappeared for months. Diddy's private jet kept flying while he sat in jail. Every time a celebrity gets too loud, they vanish. And what comes back isn't them. Joe Rogan connected every dot. And what he revealed will make you question everything you thought you knew about Hollywood. Stay with us, because this truth doesn't stay buried for long. Paris. 2026, Jim Carrey was gone. February 2026, Paris. The César Awards, France's version of the Oscars. Jim Carrey had not been seen in public since November of the previous year. 3 months of complete silence. No interviews, no social media, no public appearances, nothing. And then, suddenly, there he was, on one of the biggest stages in European entertainment, smiling wide, delivering a speech in French, laughing with the crowd like everything was perfectly normal. But the people who had followed Jim Carrey for 30 years were not celebrating. They were alarmed. His eyes, always a warm, distinct brown, were now visibly green. His skin, which naturally carried the lines of a 64-year-old man, was smooth, almost unnaturally smooth. His jawline looked structurally different, and the way he moved, the rhythm of his speech, the timing of his humor, all of it felt slightly off, like someone doing a very convincing impression of Jim Carrey, but not quite landing it. Social media moved fast. Screenshots were compared side by side. Old interview clips were placed next to the César Awards footage. The difference was not subtle. It was jarring. Fans who had watched Jim Carrey since The Mask, since Ace Ventura, since The Truman Show, these were not casual viewers. These were people who knew every facial expression, every vocal quirk, every physical habit the man had built over 4 decades in front of cameras. And they were saying the same thing. This is not him. Some people pushed back. They said plastic surgery. But plastic surgery does not change your eye color. That is not how it works. And it does not alter bone structure to the degree visible in side-by-side comparisons. And it absolutely does not change the deep personal rhythm of how a person speaks, the pauses, the breath, the instinctive physicality that is as unique to a person as a fingerprint. Others suggested colored contact lenses. Possible. But even with contacts and jaw surgery combined, something else was missing. The energy was wrong. The presence was wrong. Jim Carrey has always had a specific electricity. When he enters a room, a barely contained chaos that has defined his entire public life. The person in Paris was calm, measured, controlled. 3 things Jim Carrey has never been on a public stage in his life. Then there was the speech itself. He spoke in French, carefully prepared, carefully rehearsed. He said he had written it out, researched it. I practiced it obsessively. That detail alone stopped people, because Jim Carrey, the real Jim Carrey, has built his entire career on spontaneity, on instinct, on doing the unexpected thing in the unexpected moment. A carefully rehearsed, formally prepared award show speech is the opposite of everything Jim Carrey has ever stood for as a performer, and the timing made everything worse. Jim Carrey had spent years deliberately stepping away from Hollywood. He had spoken openly about being exhausted by fame, He skipped award shows. He turned down major projects. He had publicly and repeatedly said that celebrity culture was hollow, that none of it carried any real meaning. In one of his most watched interviews, standing outside a major awards show surrounded by cameras, he said directly, "There is no meaning to any of this." Then he vanishes for 3 months and comes back at an award show, precisely the kind of event he had spent years telling the world he wanted nothing to do with. That contradiction is not small. That is not a man changing his mind after some rest and reflection. That is a 180-degree personality shift happening in the space of 3 months, with no explanation offered and no questions answered. Fans who tried to raise these points were dismissed online, called crazy, called conspiracy theorists, but the screenshots did not go away. The video comparisons did not go away, and the questions did not go away. Joe Rogan, going through the César Awards footage with his audience, said what millions were already quietly thinking. The pattern is always the same. A celebrity gets too honest. Once they start talking about things that powerful people do not want discussed publicly, then they disappear. And when they return, they are different, not older, not tired from years of hard work, just fundamentally, completely, unexplainably different. And Jim Carrey had been very, very honest for a very long time. What Jim Carrey was saying before he vanished. To understand why this disappearance matters, you have to understand who Jim Carrey was before Paris. This was not just a comedian. Jim Carrey was one of the very few people in Hollywood who said dangerous things out loud, things most celebrities only whisper in private. At a red carpet event, Jim Carrey walked up to a reporter and said, without being asked, that none of it meant anything. The fame, the awards, the celebrities, the whole spectacle. He called it meaningless. So this was a man who had seen behind the curtain and wanted no part of what was on the other side. He also spoke directly about the Illuminati, not as a joke, not as a bit, but as a warning. He called out talk show hosts by name. He said people on television were being used to keep the public distracted. The goal, he said, was to keep people happy and docile so they would never ask real questions about who was actually in control. Then there was the moment on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Jim Carrey pulled out a hand gesture, identified it as the secret symbol of the Illuminati, and looked directly into the camera. He was not performing. He said, "I am here to blow the lid off it. I am sick of the secrets and the lies." Fallon laughed. The audience laughed. But Carrey's face told a different story. After Diddy's arrest in 2024, Jim Carrey spoke out again, this time specifically about humiliation rituals inside Hollywood, about couch culture, about the way powerful men in the industry controlled and manipulated those beneath them. He was getting louder, more specific, more dangerous to the people he was naming. Then he went quiet. 3 months of silence. Then Paris. Kanye West told us exactly what would happen. Kanye West did something almost no celebrity in history has ever done. He warned us. Before his most controversial period, Kanye said directly in recorded interviews that if he ever disappeared and came back looking or acting differently, it was not him. He said powerful people in the industry had threatened him, threatened his money, threatened his freedom, threatened his life. He said he woke up every single morning surprised to still be alive. And he talked about medication. He said that when he asked his doctors how much lithium they intended to put him on, it took them 4 full days to answer because they were embarrassed by the amount. He refused. He said clearly, "If I had taken the medication, I would not be here." He went further. He named MK Ultra. He said his personal trainer had connections to Canadian military intelligence and defense research. These were not vague, emotional accusations. These were specific claims about specific people with specific institutional ties. And then, Kanye disappeared. When he came back, the change was immediate and obvious. The things he cared about had shifted. The way he spoke had changed. He started doing things the old Kanye had explicitly and publicly said he would never do. And he began apologizing to people in the industry he had previously exposed by name. And then, most shocking of all, he went back on his medication. The same man who said he would rather be dead than go back on medication quietly started taking it again. No explanation. No public statement. It just happened. One viral tweet captured what millions were feeling. This is not Kanye. The man recently called himself the new Jesus. Now he is apologizing to everyone he exposed. That is not a personality shift. That is a replacement. Joe Rogan's take was direct. Whatever happened to Kanye between his disappearance and his return, the person who came back was not operating with the same values, the same convictions, or the same voice as the person who left. And Kanye himself had already told us exactly what that would mean. Jamie Foxx, Diddy. To the timeline. Nobody answers. Jamie Foxx was hospitalized in April 2023. His family gave vague updates. The public was told it was a medical emergency, but never told what kind. For weeks, one of the most visible and energetic celebrities in Hollywood was simply gone. No explanation, no details, just silence. He came back months later, and almost immediately, people noticed things that did not add up. Cat Williams, in an interview that spread across every platform, said he believed the person who returned was not the real Jamie Foxx. He was specific. Then suddenly, after months of disappearing, the man who came back had a face full of them. Cat Williams also pointed out that a tattoo on the back of Jamie's head was missing. A tattoo does not just disappear. See, he said it plainly. The clone kept messing up. Now you can disagree with Cat Williams. That is your right. But here is what is much harder to dismiss the timeline. Jamie Foxx was hospitalized on April 27, 2023. Diddy was arrested in September 2024. Jamie's full public return happened during the exact period surrounding Diddy's legal proceedings. That overlap is not nothing. That is a specific sequence of events involving two men who had been publicly connected for years through events, through the entertainment circuit, through social spaces that federal investigators were actively examining by the time Diddy's case became public. Multiple sources in the years following suggested Jamie Foxx had been present at gatherings that were later flagged during the federal investigation into Sean Combs. Nobody confirmed this officially. Nobody denied it either. Was Jamie's disappearance a genuine health crisis? Possibly. People get sick. Emergencies happen without warning. Was it an arrangement, a quiet exit while things got dangerous around him? That question has never been seriously answered by anyone with direct knowledge. Jamie Foxx himself, during a stand-up set after his return, addressed the clone rumors directly. He laughed about it. He told the audience there was not enough clone juice in the world to copy him. The crowd laughed with him. But laughter is not an explanation. And the freckles question was never answered. And then there is Diddy. Sean Combs was arrested in September 2024 and placed in federal detention. Almost immediately, people who followed his case closely began comparing photographs. The bone structure around the nose and jaw looked different in ways that lighting and camera angle alone could not fully explain. At the same time, Diddy's private jet was flying. Not grounded, not seized, flying. Aviation tracking accounts with confirmed tail number data logged the aircraft in New Zealand, Hawaii, and Oakland, while its registered owner was supposedly sitting in a federal detention cell with no freedom of movement. Private jets do not fly themselves. Joe Rogan raised the question directly. If one of the most connected, most powerful men in entertainment and politics was facing decades in prison, would the same powerful system that built him allow that to happen without finding another way out? He never answered that question on air. He did not need to. The jet kept flying, and the man in the cell did not look quite right. What the science behind it? Most people stop here, because the next part forces you to move from entertainment to reality. Human cloning is illegal in most countries. That is a fact. But illegal and impossible are two completely different words, and confusing them is exactly how powerful people protect themselves. Dog cloning is not science fiction. It is commercially available right now. Companies in South Korea have been offering the service for years. For around $50,000, a dog's DNA is extracted, used to create a viable embryo, and carried to term by a surrogate. The result is genetically identical to the original animal. Owners who have gone through the process report that even certain personality traits carry over, something scientists describe as both remarkable and deeply unsettling. And that service is available to the general public. Now ask yourself, what has been developed in private, with unlimited funding, over the last 30 to 40 years by people who have every reason to keep it secret? Joe Rogan put it simply: if they are telling you there are no clones, the guy telling you is probably a clone. That sounds like a punchline. But the serious version of that statement is this: the people who would have the resources to develop and use human cloning technology are the same people who control what gets researched, what gets reported, what gets funded, and what gets labeled a conspiracy theory. History has a long record of things that were called impossible until they weren't, and an equally long record of things that were called conspiracy theories until the government documents were released decades later. And the question is not whether it is scientifically possible. The biology says it is. The question is whether the people with the money, the motive, and the access would actually do it. Look at the pattern. Look at the timeline. Look at the jet still flying while the man sits in a cell. Then answer that question yourself. Why this keeps happening to the same kind of person? Here is the part that ties everything together. This is not about one celebrity behaving strangely after a long vacation. Look at who this keeps happening to, and you will see the pattern clearly. It is always someone who got too big to control. It is always someone who started talking about things the industry did not want discussed. It is always someone with a massive platform, a loud voice, and a growing willingness to name names. Jim Carrey called out the Illuminati by name, exposed humiliation rituals, said award shows were meaningless. Vanished, returned completely changed. Kanye West, named MK Ultra, talked about death threats from inside the industry, said he would rather die than be medicated into silence. Vanished, returned, apologizing to everyone he exposed. Jamie Foxx connected to Diddy, hospitalized under unexplained circumstances at a moment when federal investigations were heating up. Vanished, returned looking and acting differently. Diddy arrested, placed in detention, while his private jet continued flying internationally, and the person in his cell had a different face. Joe Rogan's point was not that cloning is definitely happening. Well, his point was simpler and more disturbing. The pattern is too consistent to be random. You do not assassinate a major celebrity in 2025. That creates sympathy. That creates investigations. That creates martyrs. You replace them. You bring back a version that cooperates, that promotes the industry, defends the system, and shows up at award shows with a smile. And the original disappears quietly, while everyone assumes the person they are watching is still the same person they always knew. The mechanism is quiet. The result is clean. And the public never thinks to look too closely, because the face is still familiar. Jim Carrey warned about this system. Kanye named it. Jamie Foxx got caught in the edges of it. Joe Rogan gave it the largest microphone it has ever had. You now have the full picture. That is the complete picture. Jim Carrey, Kanye, Jamie Foxx, Diddy, and the pattern Joe Rogan exposed that the industry is working hard to keep quiet. The eyes that changed color. The jet that kept flying. The man who said he would rather die than take medication, then quietly started taking it again. The comedian who called award shows meaningless, who then showed up at one, smiling for the cameras. None of it fits the official story. And the official story has never seriously tried to explain any of it. Now, we want to hear from you. Which celebrity do you think has been replaced? Drop your answer in the comments. Every single one gets read. If this hit different like this video right now, the next video goes even deeper. The truth does not disappear. It just waits.